Good evening, workshoppers. Here we are on episode 140 of the Westmarch Workshop. Diablo turns 6. It feels like it was just a couple episodes ago that Reaper Souls was having its anniversary, and then now here we are with the Diablo 3 anniversary. It's so nice having everything all close together. But we're gonna go through. It is another different episode again. Unfortunately, Leviathan is having some asthma problems and will not be joining us here tonight, but Dreadscythe has been more than gracious to go through and hop on and fill in for this episode. And how are you doing tonight, sir?
I'm doing wonderful. My house is out of soda and I'm reduced to drinking milk. Please save me with caffeine.
Ooh, that sounds terrible. I'm saying that as 100% legitimately, like, addicted to caffeine.
Yeah, I began to feel the withdrawal symptoms right before the show, but we'll power through, as we always do.
Yeah. You can at least supplement with tea. Or, like, coffee. I'm not a coffee person.
Yeah, but see, like, tea and coffee is a fickle beast. They'll either work way too much or it'll just knock you out somehow, some way. So I didn't want to risk it.
But, alright, so, as you could probably guess since the last episode, there hasn't really been too much big things going on within the Diablo community. We're still going and waiting on hearing about the kind of the end of Season 13, Season 14, which we all think should be coming soon, like within the next week or two, or this could start going for being like the longest season in recent memory, even longer than Season 12.
Yeah. It's just, the announcement is just another Friday away.
At least we hope so. We hope so. So that'll be something to go through and just keep your eyes on. Who knows? You know, by the time that this episode goes through and reaches you, we could be surprised by this Friday with a season announcement, you know, or at least if not next Friday. I think pushing it into June might be a little bit too long of a season, but we'll have to wait and see.
Hopefully it's this Friday and the season ends maybe the weekend after Memorial Day weekend, because Blizzard's pretty good about, you know, employees are off and they tell employees, you're taking off. Go do something.
Yep.
Come back refreshed, because that's how this industry works, and they'll do stuff afterwards.
Yep. We'll just have to wait and play this one by ear. What's interesting comparing it back to Season 12 is that even though there wasn't a patch, there was at least kind of like a PTR. You know, for like the little server slam where they were doing, they were testing like back-end stuff, which, you know, eventually kind of came out to the third-party tools, or at least being able to identify the third-party tools like bots, Turbo HUD, and all the other stuff. You know, we didn't see anything like that besides the mystery patch in the last episode, which we did see at least a little bit of a ban wave. Maybe we might see a bigger hit here towards the end of the season, whenever we actually get the announcement for the end of season, you know, before Season 14, that we might get another little bit of the bots purged out.
Yeah, I mean that would be good, because the season in the beginning, I would say the first 3 to 5 weeks, maybe even 6 weeks, were pretty clean, and then there were the usual rumors of bots coming back and everything, but it seems very minor. And then there were one, if not two, additional like if you didn't know, you didn't know kind of ban waves, but people noticed, like people at the top end, like, oh, I was 24, now I'm ranked 22 all of a sudden. Like, okay, so 2 people got banned above me, so they must have did another ban wave. And I don't know, since we're on the topic, it's like one of these things that I feel we need to reiterate. It's almost boilerplate at this point. Blizzard doesn't talk about their practices because that naturally gives the botters the leg up. And when you think about the nature of hacking and people who hack stuff and try to try to do this stuff. The people who are doing this are naturally ahead of the companies, software developers that they're hacking, because if it was the other way, you can't. It's a chicken egg scenario, but we know that the chicken became the egg became before the chicken. So these people hack, they come up with the programs, and then the software developers have to A, care, and then B, try to find where the vulnerabilities are and then fix them. And then it's an endless cycle until either party gives up. So I feel it's something that we need to realistically tell people every time this comes up. That's just the nature of the beast.
Yeah, it really is. It will basically be a forever struggle. For every time that you come out with a better way of defeating, the third-party programs, they'll make the third-party programs better. But it is something at least that Blizzard is committed to, and that they've continually, time and again, shown that they do care, and that it is something that they want to solve, and they're in it for the long haul.
Mm-hmm. It is the more real-world equivalent of the eternal conflict.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But, kind of going back a little bit to go and talk that we are 1 day behind the official Diablo anniversary. So just yesterday, that's May 15th, Diablo turned 6. And as part of that, the official Diablo Twitter account went through and posted just like a little tweet asking people to share like what their favorite memories are of the game. And it's had a lot of responses from throughout the community. I've seen a lot of people going through talking about it on Twitter, sharing some things that like I had forgotten about the game. I just wanted to go and give you like a moment before I start talking about it. But is there any particular like favorite moment within Diablo 3 that you had to share?
I mean, there are a few. I mean, is that okay if it's like a few, like 2 or 3?
I guess.
Okay.
Yes.
The one that always, because it was personal, yet it was personal, but it revolved around the community, the greater Diablo 3 community at the time, and just the feeling we all shared. And it was when, at the time, I wasn't part of BlizzPro. I knew of BlizzPro, but I wasn't part. This was going back, 6 years. This is going back, it's going back about 6 years ago, because that's when it happened. The website that I had, formerly Long Live Diablo Expressions, that was the website I had. That was my community. And I had a couple of staffers, and we worked hard on getting a Ventrilo partnership with a company, because that was even before Discord was a thing. And we managed to get a 300-slot sponsored, free-to-us server. And what do 4 people need a 300-slot server for? So, originally, I came up with the idea, but I eventually passed it on to one of my staffers, and we came up with a clan and guild support program. And this was, again, before clans were officially in the game. So we were doing a lot of community grunt work. And we reached out to different communities and different clans, and we said, hey, we know Ventrilos are expensive. We'll host your clan for free. Just if anyone asks where you're hosted, just bring them to us. Just free to them forever, because it was free to us. Just pay it forward, bring more to us, just bring this community, make it bigger. And on launch day, the 300-slot server had 268 people. It was almost maxed. It was a glorious sight. If any of you remember Ventrilo from back in the day, imagine seeing 268 people in a Ventrilo server, where every guild had their own like little mini setup of their own channels, where they had their own mini administrative privileges. It was a really accomplishing moment personally, because that's when I was running my own community, and I did it. But it was greater still, because we were all Diablo 3 people, and we all were rallying for this title. And I came in D3. I didn't have the experience of D2 and D1. So I was kind of feeding off the energy that they had for this franchise and what I thought this franchise was going to be to me. And it was a glorious moment just to, when midnight struck, Area 37 happened. Yes, we have to mention that. But it wasn't that bad because it was at like 3 o'clock in the morning. We were all still hyped up on energy. We got in, we started playing, and it was actually even more glorious because, like, if that's the worst thing that happened, 3 hours delayed to get in, whatever. Much worse things could happen. There have been worse WoW launches, to tell you the truth. Just Area 37 is stuck much more than that. So that's probably my greatest memory, because it just involves so many different aspects of community and personal and accomplishments. But I guess just going along with that, it's, to keep it simple and short, it's there. I don't have another fond memory because it's been the continuous building of the community, the continuous meeting of new people at BlizzCons, and almost forcibly making people go to BlizzCon, ISVR, to get more people there to experience what that is, to give them that injection of what this community really is, beyond all the haters, all the dead gamers and everything, and just revitalize their passion for everything. So those are my memories.
Very nice. And you took me down a trip down memory lane, because I had mostly forgotten about Ventrilo and all of that stuff. Mm-hmm. And then having to go through and like save your like admin privileges, or I forget what it was called, like as like a text file, like outside, outside the program, to upload in case you had to like change your name or something like that.
I mean, at least Vent was pretty good with his checkmark system. I mean, God help me if I ever had to do something on TeamSpeak or Little Mumble. Shudder. Mumble.
You're going way back now. Man. And also just the idea that, you had to pay for those Mumble, Ventrilo, and TeamSpeak servers, and now you have Discord.
Yeah. And Discord kicks ass. It does everything and more than Ventrilo and all of them could ever have, like... No wonder why Discord, like, took over the planet within, like, a month of it coming out.
Yeah, and it's funny we're now going through and talking about Discord. Completely unintentional segue, but as Leviathan had gone through and pointed out on Twitter, that May 15th is also actually the 3rd anniversary of Discord itself. Oh,
that's just hilarious in so many ways.
Yes, so it's kind of like that double celebration, because Discord has been amazing. Leviathan went through and mentioned it as part of like his favorite memory, which I'll go through and read here in a second, was very similar to yours, is because of that community building. And let's just go ahead and read it. But Leviathan went through and posted like his favorite memory on Twitter, and since he can't be here tonight, I hope he doesn't mind if I go through and take this one for him. I'll try not to butcher it as best as I can. 6 years is exactly 1/5 of my life, and Diablo 3 has been a daily presence ever since its release. From those first monsters killed on my own to the opportunities to share my adventures with thousands of people, I don't have enough words to express how amazing this ride has been. It is also great that Discord is celebrating its 3rd birthday simultaneously, because having been a Discord partner has been integral to getting closer with my community. I'm particularly thankful for how the platform helped me get the solo self-found league off the ground and foster new friendships. In 6 years, I've played a little over 8,446 hours of Diablo 3, and that's just the retail version. Countless hours have been spent with the community creating content, testing on the PTR, attending events, and more. I love this game in this franchise. I can't wait to see what's next. And that's, beautiful little sentiments from Leviathan there. And that it really is... Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's one of the things that at least connects the three of us together, because my sentiments were a lot of the same is, you know, that community aspect or the friendships and connections that you've made. It was like within the game, I remember things like beating Inferno or like the first time fighting Belial. But it's because of Diablo 3 that I ever got to meet, you know, like yourself or Leviathan in the first place, and getting the chance to go through and, you know, like work on the show and just be a part of the community. It's been an awesome trip, you know, for these past 6 years, and it's something that I've enjoyed. I've loved being a part of, even, you know, just, you know, nothing more than a talking head on a podcast, but it's been great. And I know that recently with the whole BlizzCon tickets that have gone on sale, I really hope that the listeners out there that you've gotten tickets, let us know if you made it, so that way we can go and try and make plans for some sort of a official meetup while we have the time to do so. But you've been kind of like ground zero as far as the BlizzCon tickets have been going, as far as making sure that like everyone within like kind of the core Diablo 3 content creator community has been given the opportunity to go. What has that been like?
It's been great. Let's say it's the whole reason why I did it. It's been for selfish and also selfless reasons, and I'm letting the cat out of the bag right now. Exclusive. My wife and I, we're not getting any older. She's 30, I'm 33. And one of the sticklers is that I'm a worrywart in the relationship. So my whole deal with kids is I didn't want to have kids until we had our place. We were financially as good as we could be, because you're never going to be, especially with kids. And you know, the house was ready. So my wife and I, we've come back for years, this, that, whether we have them naturally, you know, or adopt them. So we've begun the process of becoming licensed foster caregivers, but we're going to be looking into adopting. And since we're in Pennsylvania, which is a lot less red tape compared to New York, where we've formerly lived, after this BlizzCon, we could be parents. Like, it's
wow.
Like kind of crazy. Like, we're going through the process. We still have all the classes to do, pretty much. But like, once we're there, it's like it was described to us point blank and blunt. As soon as we get our license and we are known and our file is there, we could effectively be called at like 2:30 in the morning, say, hey, we have a child or 2 or 3 that meet your criteria. Can you be down here? Like, do you accept them? And it sounds silly, but the process is like, does this meet? And if you say like yes, because it can be that quick, because it could be like an emergency placement type situation, then you say yes, you get in a car, you go. So like the easiest way of explaining is like you can go to bed as like just a married couple and wake up the next morning with like 2 or 3 kids. So you see my eyes and everything going.
I have a feeling that that's like a parent's worst nightmare. They like wake up in the morning, oh shit, we have another one. You know?
Yeah. So we missed a few classes, so it kind of delays this couple of months, but it's good because we're going to get one more Disney trip, probably without kids. BlizzCon, probably without kids, or if we do before then, it'll be worked out. I'm still going. But next year is kind of up in the air because kids eat money. No, they eat food. No, they eat food, which costs money and money. Yes,
you know,
there we
depending
go.
upon the age, if you put the money down in front of them, I'm sure they'd eat it too. So it is kind of a factual statement.
Like, here's a nickel. Here's a penny. Don't worry about the copper. It's really just tanner, steel, whatever.
It'll pass through. It'll pass through.
Yeah, it'll pass through, and you get some iron out of it. Maybe we'll see.
I don't think that's how that works, but If they can get iron from copper, that'd be impressive. But you know, we'll leave the chemistry class for later. That'll be the after show.
Yes.
So basically, what you're saying is like this whole big push to get the whole community involved. Is this?
Yeah.
You know, like after this, future BlizzCons might be questionable.
Yeah, I mean, who knows? Maybe it'll be myself, Mrs. Scythe, and 1, 2, or 3 Deathlings. Yes, I already came up with names. We'll maybe go there. I'll hang out with you guys during the con during the day. Then I'll go over to them because Disneyland's right there. We have a timeshare with Disney until the year retires. So who knows what the future brings? But again, who knows what the future brings? So that's why I'm trying to make this year as great for the community, selfishly for myself, but also for it too. And that is the wonder. If you ever want to understand who I am as a person, I am a wondrous contradiction of ideas, and that is the pinnacle of something for me, something for the community. So with all of that known, that's the reason why I'm trying to reach out. That's the reason why I looked at Drop and Wolfchoir and Zanji and Cynthia, and I'm like, oh hell no, we're not giving up on you guys. Get in here on the second wave. One of us is going to get through, because one of us is going to get through, and we'll get tickets and we'll handle everybody, and then we'll go from there. So even though it seems like hell organizing everything, doing the hotel and everything, is something I like doing and I've done for a while. So it's good. I'm good with it. Yeah. It's great.
And I'm just throwing it out there now that even if you might not be able to make like a potential future BlizzCon, we're still going to have you book the hotel and everything.
And you guys are going to pay me an official commission at that point.
we'll talk later. We'll talk later. That's for next year. That's for next year.
Right.
Yeah.
That's how it is.
This was originally a conversation on the last episode that I kind of shelved for this episode, and it hasn't worked out because Leviathan still isn't here.
Shelf.
What?
I was pantomiming taking a book off the shelf. But
oh my.
Bad segue.
Yep. Did you go through the David Brevik AMA?
I knew of it. I knew the day that it was happening, and then life. So no, I haven't had an opportunity to go through it, unfortunately.
Okay. So this one, I guess we might table for a little bit farther down the future, you know, so that way we can actually go and, you know, properly discuss like, you know, like a lot of the things within it. You know, it just has a couple of like little things like about Diablo and some other stuff. A lot of course about his game, his new game, It Lurks Below, that will be coming out.
Mm-hmm.
We can always talk about that at a future date, because it's not, since a lot of it focused on like Diablo 2, it's not like that's going anywhere. It's like, you know, something that needs to be covered like amazingly right now. There was a couple of things I did go through and find that I had missed initially. One of them, as we're going through and listening here to the lovely Diablo 2 soundtrack, one of the questions that he had gotten was, you know, why was the music in D2 so good? And how much did Matt Uelmen actually like influence the development of D2? You know, or was like the music that he was creating for the game done after like the act itself was done and shipped? And we only got like a partial answer, but of course it's because Matt is just a straight up like music genius, which of course he is. This is just beautiful music. I can never hear a 12-string guitar now without instantly thinking, you know, of like Diablo 2 and Matt Uelmen. But apparently it was while they were in the production, he was working on the music while the acts were in development. So it was one of those. He didn't go into whether there was any like back and forth or, hey, I just created this music for the zone. Is this like fitting? Oh, we need to like capitalize that or something like that. There was no follow-ups from there. But it is a little bit different from how most games are done nowadays, in that it's like the game itself will be like completed, or the game will be like we've got like a lot of the concept art for the zone. So here you can go and start making the music for it. And the two development processes, even though there might be simultaneous, are diverged. There's not really any back and forth between it.
Yeah, and I guess at like first thought you wouldn't think that music, background music, zone music or an area would really be affected by whether it's be done after effect or development, or if there's even cross conversations in the development of either or both at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess this kind of is alluding to, if the individuals involved do that there is a little bit of rubbing off from one to the other, and it could make a much more enriching atmosphere and listening experience as you're playing the game.
Mm-hmm. And segueing just a little bit here, there is out there in the ether, I've forgotten where it is, and it's been a while since I went back and looked at it, but Matt Uelman actually, I think it was back 2010, 2011, might have even been like 2009, he did like a 17-page interview talking about making music for games. A lot of it focused on Diablo. There was a little bit about Torchlight, because I think it was like in the process of being developed, but it hadn't come out yet. And some of the things that he talked about, like just to like show like how much of a musical genius like this man is, like the vast majority of Diablo 2 is samples. Almost all of it is samples. A little bit of like the 12-string guitar that you're hearing right now is him himself that's going through and playing it. But most everything else is just like taken from samples and then spliced together. And even like when you get into some of the vocal tracks in Act 2, like such as Harem, even that is just sample. And it's
wow.
Yeah, it's so beautiful. I think it wasn't until actually like Lord of Destruction that he had used like a real orchestra. And that was, I believe, the Prague Symphony Orchestra that he worked with on that. And then, of course, going on and helping out with World of Warcraft and the Burning Crusade before then afterwards leaving the company, unfortunately. Which I believe a lot of the tracks that he did and was credited for in the Burning Crusade actually were from Blizzard North's version of Diablo 3. That was, at the time, extremely early in development.
Yeah. And maybe you know this, maybe don't. Correct me if I'm wrong, or we'll do corrections in the next show, whatever. But wasn't there something also a little bit, and this may not, I'm not talking about the AMA, but I'm just talking in general from what I remember. Wasn't there also a little bit of a challenge with the sound in general in Diablo 2 because of sound channels available? Wasn't there something along the lines of that? Or am I just misremembering something?
That I don't know. Nothing's really coming to mind as far as like any issues with sound channels or anything like that. Yeah.
I remember there was something interesting about the sound and how they had to do it. I forget exactly what it was, because now I'm talking about it. I remember that there was a mini conversation about it. Maybe at a BlizzCon with other people who just happened to be at Blizzard North, who are still working there at Blizzard nowadays. Yeah. I have to research in that. Now my brain's going, you must know what this is now.
Yeah. But I think also like going back and kind of like contrasting and comparing like Diablo 2, Diablo 3, and Reaper of Souls. Just from now that we're going through and talking about music and sound, I have to go through and get on this like little soapbox again. And sorry for anyone else that's remembered this rant in the past, but in like Diablo 2, the music was an integral aspect of the game. It was very like there in your face. It's a part of the zone, and when you would go and you would hear specific tracks, you would know like what part of the game that is. And like if Wilderness comes on, you start picturing densely forested areas and fallen, the corrupted sisters all coming running at you and such. Whereas if you heard Toru, it's big open expanses of desert. In Diablo 3, they kind of pulled away from that because one of the things that they had worked on, like kind of like the sound department at Blizzard, leading between Diablo 2 and Diablo 3 with their approach in World of Warcraft, was that music took a little bit more of a backseat. It kind of like supplemented what you were visually seeing or engaging with in the game, but it was something that was made to kind of like just be background. It wasn't like something to detract, that you're gonna like stop in your shoes and be like, oh my god, this music. They wanted you to focus on combat and focus on the game and running to the next quest. And I think that was something that they might have carried a bit too much into Diablo 3, because if you compare the soundtrack of D3 and Reaper of Souls, it's huge. Like, there's a lot of tracks that when you listen to in the original D3, like, you'd be kind of like hard pressed where, what zone was that from? Like, there's a couple easy ones in Act 4, but it was a very stark contrast if you didn't play any other Blizzard titles and you're just a Diablo fan. And they didn't bring that back until Reaper of Souls, where the music at least was a lot more, like thematic and invoked a bigger emotional response while you're going and playing through. And you had that transition from Westmarch to the marshes, the Blood Marsh, and then down into the ruins of Corvus. And it was just like this great like musical journey, and you can listen to those tracks together, and you can actually go back and kind of like, even if you don't really pay too much attention to the music, as long as you have it turned on, you can't make the association if you don't listen to the music at all, but you can kind of feel that descent down into the darkness and the unknown if you listen to the tracks together. And so, sorry, that was my little kind of like music ramp, and that is something that whatever comes next in the Diablo franchise, I hope that they go back and they keep that, because it is something, at least to me, is part of the identity of what makes a game a Diablo game, is the music being part of the experience.
Yeah, no, it is a part, because it's like, you can say, okay, play without any kind of sound. Like, no. Your skills and abilities would have a lot less weight behind them. Like, it's the sound and the visuals. It's like they're all equal players at the end of the day. Mm-hmm.
And that, of course, is nothing against people that, some people, they just like to listen to their own music. They don't, maybe they get distracted, from the in-game audio. There's a bunch of people I've played, like WoW and stuff like that they would completely turn off their in-game audio, so they wouldn't even hear the cues or anything like that from anything besides like just add-ons.
Mm-hmm. I mean, those rat runs are going to get done if you're listening to like classical music. I mean, they could, but probably not.
Yeah, I mean, rat runs is something a little bit different, but we'll shelve that topic for a little bit later. Let's see. We can check off the AMA, touch on that one. Check off the Diablo anniversary. There is, of course, kind of following up from the last episode with the last epoch. Unfortunately, if you're not listening to this live, there's not a lot of time of which to go through and jump on it. But the last epoch right now is their last couple of hours of their Kickstarter campaign. They did successfully get funded. So they at least are going to have that nice big development boost. But they've only got, I think, like 8 hours to go. I think they hit one of their stretch goals. I'm not sure.
Yeah, last night. Yeah, last night when Levi was streaming, he had them in there, and then they did kind of like a impromptu giveaway. I think at that time, like somebody did like a $2,500 donation, or it went up by $2,500, and that got it just into that stretch goal that you're mentioning.
Wow. That is pretty awesome. That is pretty awesome. But it's an awesome game. If you didn't have the opportunity to go through and back it, still like go through, check it out. I believe that there will still be signups for like the alpha, or maybe not the alpha, but definitely the beta for the game, even if you weren't a backer of the project. So just go through, keep an eye on it. I'm sure Leviathan and I will be talking about it on future episodes. Because this one, I don't know, it's got me interested. I've really been enjoying it. I'm really looking forward to the Necromancer when that comes out in the alpha. So we'll have to see. And I know Leviathan went through and actually is kind of like dipping his toe in some other ARPG waters, and he recently kind of like did a little bit of a trial of Path of Exile. Went through, did I think was it 1 or 2 streams that he did with PoE?
I want to say 2, because I want to give myself the benefit of the doubt. But it could have been 1. It also could have been 2.
I think it was 1. I want to go with 1. If Leviathan was here, he could answer that question. But I digress. Yeah, I've not tried it, so I don't really have much to go through and talk about on that aspect. But it is definitely the time to like go through and start, giving some other games a try. Especially when we don't even have the end of season announcement yet, or waiting for that. It would give us something to do in the meantime. And then once we do get the end of season announcement, it will probably be at least a week or 2 before the start of season 14.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so like we said in the beginning, any given Friday at this point, we're hoping the end of season announcement. Well, Tuesday or Friday. So, yeah, it's easily, whenever we get the announcement, it's easily 3 to 4 weeks to the beginning of the next seasons. And the summertime is notoriously slow for gaming in general. And Diablo, and it's almost in at least 5 of the 6 years, the only not slow summer was last year, and that was only because the Necromancer came out, and it was something new and exciting to do over the summer.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, this summer will probably be a good time to still give Diablo and all its individual games some love, but also exploring other games. Also to just prevent total burnout completely on Diablo. But also explore what other games have to offer, because now that I've kind of had my own dealings with the game and kind of put them into words, I'm now allowing myself to explore other games, how they creatively handle this problem that may exist in Diablo 3, or how this game had a problem and how they resolved it. More perspectives, more problem solvings, more additions to the genre. What works, what doesn't, what can be tweaked. All the fun things we get to do as players in this genre, with more games coming out than less.
Mm-hmm. And it's funny that we are kind of like in that aspect where there's so many of these games that are kind of like going through, coming out, or doing like updates, and despite kind of like having the lack of new stuff coming from Diablo 3, I still have noticed that a bunch of the communities are active, and they're looking for something. They're all just kind of like out there trying to find like the next big thing, the next content that they can find. The ARPG genre is still alive and well, and they're just kind of like waiting for the next big thing, which at least for us in our community is going to be Diablo 4, Diablo next. But definitely keeping the eye out.
Yeah, definitely, for sure.
With that, since you were kind of last minute pulling onto the show, was there anything else that you wanted to talk about on the episode before I kind of like dig into some of the community section?
Oh, I could, but no, it's okay. I don't want to grab 10 soapboxes and do my Paragon rant here because we'll be here for 20 minutes about that.
But maybe we should have that discussion at some point, though. Yeah, at least like why Paragon shouldn't be in the next Diablo game.
Oh man. Well, see, okay, we're not going to get into it. But I'm going to give you one. I'm going to give you one thing. One weird, simple reason why there may not be a Diablo 3 expansion. What it can do with all the non-seasoned people who are now 9,000 Paragon, and how awfully unbalanced that is, and how do you make new gear that surpasses that power level? It's like the typical WoW expansion armor, but bloated way beyond, because that power doesn't die when the armor gets removed. It stays with the character. It's the same yet different problem. But that's as far as I'll go. I'll be nice to say least. And let me clear. It's not that I hate Paragon. It's that I think something can be done to it to make it more of what its initial intention was. Still accomplish the initial goal of give pushers and grinders something to grind for, but stabilize and actually equal out the solo versus multiplayer divide with GRs, and do it in such a way that you're not adding a bunch of new stuff to the game. You're only retooling in-game systems. So that's as much as I'll get into it. I promise.
All right.
And no, caps suck. Caps do nothing. If caps did anything, then how come every modern game doesn't use them? They use diminishing returns. There's a reason for that. Okay, I'm done. Next topic. Segue. Save me. Save me and this episode.
Going on. Moving on. We're gonna go through and get into the community feedback. And so we've got a couple of emails here that have been sitting at least for a couple episodes, and sorry about that. First email comes from Chandler. Hey guys, heard you were thinking of going back to D2. Wanted to chime in and say that a couple of the PoE players made a D2 mod called Path of Diablo, made a Summoner Druid, they made Summoner Druid viable, and some other skill reworks that looked really fun, so you might want to go and give it a try. Hyped for BlizzCon and hoping I can secure tickets this year and meet both of you as a local. I can show you some of the great food too. That's actually pretty cool. And if you're in the area and you are a local, I don't know if you managed to get BlizzCon tickets or not, because we don't have any emails as far as updating that. But the best kept secrets is it's actually, besides the initial rush, it's relatively easy to get BlizzCon tickets, and that if you want to go to BlizzCon, if you more or less just show up at the convention center, you can get in. Because there are a ton that go up on like looking for BlizzCon and other such services, the day of or the day before the convention, because you'll have last minute cancellations. Someone had in a family emergency, or they ended up not getting the time off from work. They they couldn't make it, or it's too expensive. There's always something that ends up happening, and there's a lot of people with a lot of tickets that they want to try and get rid of, and it's all for the sticker cost, and I always see them going through and saying, yeah, you can keep the goodie bag so you get everything along with it. So if you didn't get a ticket, don't be discouraged. There are still plenty of avenues for you to go through and join in on the fun, and like half of the BlizzCon experience is outside of the convention anyways. So don't be afraid. Come hang out. We'll make it happen.
You just may have to have a little faith and going without the ticket, and you'll just get the ticket when you're there.
And like I said, there's the lfblizzcon.com. It's a really great vetting process for actually selling the tickets. They have a really good track record over the years of making sure that everything goes smoothly. They use it. It's a great source and utility for it as well. Our next email. This one actually comes in from Watson. Hi, Watson. I know you can't see me waving to the non-existent webcam, but he's in here in the chat with us real quick, and he's got a couple of lore questions for us. The first one here is, with the defeat of the Angel of Death in Diablo 3, are all of the Prime and Lesser Evils now free? If so, does the rift between the 3 Prime Evils and the 4 Lesser Evils still exist, or has that issue been settled? Now this one is an interesting question to answer, because we do have an official answer from Blizzard on that. And if it's oddly timed, going through and answering this question, because it was, I believe, for the 3rd Diablo 3 anniversary, they did a big live stream event, and they had a bunch of people, developers from different aspects, sound, gameplay, and including lore and story, where they answered questions in regards to this. And if you go, I believe, I don't remember it being on Diablo's official YouTube channel, but some other people have recorded it and it is out there. And I just so happened to also be on that live stream alongside Brian Kindergan and Leonard Boyarsky, and they answered that question specifically in if the Primeval is freed from the Black Soul Stone. They weren't saying that he was, with the death of Malthael, but if he was freed, it would be still as the Primeval of all of the evils conjoined together, not the 7 individual evils separated again. But the thing I always like to go and point out whenever I answer this question is going up to the actual launch of Diablo 3, Chris Metzen was up on these Diablo lore panels at BlizzCon going and talking about how the future of Diablo is the World Stone and what it is and how it impacts with all of creation. And then we get into the game and the whole World Stone idea was scrapped. And it's something that the early development for the story on it was going to go that way, but for whatever reason, they decided to drop it and went with the Black Soul Stone instead. So even though that answer is out there, it's not 100%. They can always change their minds, especially given, those 2 people no longer work at Blizzard. They're no longer in charge of the story of the franchise. And so whoever comes in and is the lead, because I don't remember the job description. I don't remember if the creative director is in charge of the actual writing or story, or if it's more of the art side of things. But they are looking, for a creative director for Team 3, the Diablo team, at the moment. And so there are some things that are still up in the air. Someone else's idea of how the story should go could be different. And it could be coming from a decision from someone higher up, outside of D3, that might have more control, over the actual way that the storylines and the franchises go. So, from what we know, it will be the Primeval, all conjoined together, all 7 of them, but that answer could change, and we won't know until we get into the next game.
Yeah, because I guess just to maybe poke a question at you that you may or may not be able to answer just because knowledge. Because that was something that always got me. Because it was always Diablo, spoilers, being killed at the end of Diablo 3, falling off the crystal arch, the Black Soul Stone falling away from, I guess if you want to say, the shell of Diablo 3 in the material world of heaven. And then we kind of get introduced in the cinematic and Reaper of Souls with Diablo dying, the soul falling to a hole in the heaven, with the Jarrus Council all looking at it, and then Tyrael decided to do his thing with the Herodrum, and that was it. So my hiccup, even if albeit a small one, was how did the Black Soul Stone capture the soul of Diablo as the prime evil? Like, handle that problem first without anyone doing anything. And then you link it up with the answer of it shatters, therefore the souls of how, like, did Diablo somehow permanently meld himself with the other 6 greater and lesser demons forever now, if we are to take the most current answer as gospel? Like, that's where things get strange for me.
Well, the first one about how they imprison the soul of the primeval in the Black Soul Stone, you have to remember, it's the Black Soul Stone that made the creation of the primeval possible in the first place. It's the focal point. Without the Black Soul Stone, it's not so much the prison, but the anchor of the primeval that was the force that fused them all together. So just like, you know, in Diablo 2, or actually all the Diablo games, how like Diablo, Mephisto, and Baal were tied specifically to the Soul Stone because their soul had more or less been kind of like imprisoned into it or bound to it as a prison. It's the same thing for the Black Soul Stone and the Primeval. It is kind of like the essence of the being at that point, and the soul is bound to that object. And now, just like we kind of saw that, you know, even with the destruction of the Soul Stones or the Black Soul Stone, the soul of that greater evil could survive. For the answer that we've been given from, you know, the developers, which of course, again, asterisk, hashtag, you know, whatever you want to say, could change, that whatever process it was that created the primeval, yes, did make it permanent, and there's no going back. Because this kind of like goes even further back to, in the, at least the Diablo timeline, the creation of creation, which is, you know, the name of the universe and everything is creation in Diablo. In the original embodiment of evil, all evil together was Tathamet, the dragon. And it had 7 heads. It was after Tathamet was slain by Anu that those 7 heads, you know, kind of congealed into those prime and lesser evils. And so it's kind of like this Black Soul Stone was used as a way of kind of bringing it back together. Now, still, of course, you have every other demon and demonic entity within all of creation that would then have to be fused back together to reform Tathamet itself. But at least that those 7 main aspects were, you know, kind of like the driving force.
Wouldn't it also have to include all of the realm of the Burning Hells itself? Because wasn't that formed from the corpse of Tathamet?
Yeah, the hell is Tathamet's corpse.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, because that was my disconnect. It's like, how did, so basically the Black Soul Stone was just naturally tuned to capture any form of demons that were ill-advised to die next to it, or at least at minimum the prime evils, lesser and greater.
Adria actually. Okay, this is turning into a lore episode now, as we're going to go through and learn about the creation of the Black Soul Stone. So you're welcome. Yep. Going back to the Great Exile and the Hunt for the Three, Zoltan Kuhl was the keeper of the Soul Stones. He was a mage that was already intuitive to like transmutation. And so they found that he would probably be the best one of actually going through and being in charge of the Soul Stones in the process of binding these prime evils into the Soul Stone. And while he was going through and caring for them, as well as kind of like perfecting the rituals to do so, he kind of found that, well, they're not perfect. I could do better. And just with, one of those like kind of tragic hero stories of as you fight evil, you become evil, that he became incredibly disenfranchised, with humanity, or I should say humanity's placement within everything. Here we are, we're having to go through and clean up the mess that the angels should have taken care of here on Sanctuary by having to deal with all of these, having to deal with the three primevals, Baal, Mephisto, and Diablo. And, heaven doesn't want to do anything about it. Like, Tyrael just kind of goes through, here's 3 stones, do something about it, and that's it. Like, this isn't right. Like, why are we just like why are we just getting kicked around? Like, we're human. We're like not so much human beings, but we're living beings. We have our own destiny. Like, we shouldn't just be a pawn in the grand scheme of creation. And so he became incredibly jaded by this, and the whole incident left a permanent scar upon him and more or less his soul. And after the capture of the 3, he left the Haradrim to go and find a way to elevate humanity to a level that could be a player amongst them. And in doing so, he found our true history as Nephilim, that we are the product of angels and demons, and we have the power to ascend above them. And so from that, he now had the mission, the goal of unlocking that Nephilim potential within all humans so we could rise up, and then heaven and hell will have to deal with our shit, instead of the other way around. And that they're going to be our pawns, instead of us just having to deal with whatever happens or whatever, demonic or angelic incursion that happens within Sanctuary. Of course, it involves a lot of ritualistic sacrifices, dabbling with demonic, magic and, blood rituals and things of that nature. And so his other Haradrim pals also questioned his sanity, and so they hunted him down and stopped him while he was in the process of creating the Black Soul Stone. Well, the Black Soul Stone was going to be...
In a very violent way, we should add.
Yes.
If you played the game, you understand why.
We're gonna chop off your head, dismember your body and drain all of your blood. That's just what we're gonna do. But the point of the Black Soul Stone was that he would be able to collect not just demon, but angelic souls, in essence, and use that to more or less artificially jumpstart, like, that Nephilim spark within all of us. And not just that, but then siphon off the power of the captured entities, so that way, well, I'm going to make all humans a Nephilim, but I'm going to make sure that I'm the strongest, and I'm going to rule over everybody. We don't want to forget that aspect. He wasn't just there for shits and giggles and was going to be all happy-go-lucky with everyone else. He still was going to rule over all of humanity as, more or less a god. But, he went through and he perfected the original Soul Stones that Tyrael had brought from heaven down to Sanctuary. And I believe because the Soul Stones themselves actually not from heaven, but from Pandemonium, because they were parts of the World Stone. And so that way, like, here you go, these have the power to contain souls. And Zoltan Kulle also found a way to not just demon souls, because demons are immortal, but the kind of like the essence that makes angels, because angels aren't immortal. When they die, their essence might kind of like go back to heaven and be reborn, but as a new angel. Tyrael is a miracle. Tyrael coming back as Tyrael, never heard of before, and the angels at first saw as like an absolute miracle, like this has never happened before. And then of course he immediately forsakes like his angelic immortality and becomes a human. Moving on though, after the Haradrim stopped him, they pretty much put away all of his research and such, because they couldn't actually kill Zoltan Kulle. They could only lock him away because he had found a way to make himself immortal. And then there were just so many other traps and such that all that they could do with Zoltan Kulle's research is kind of like seal it and hope that no one finds it. Unfortunately, someone did find it. Adria, working as a pawn, for Diablo, or not exactly a pawn, but a follower of Diablo. She found Zoltan Kulle's research and went out and completed the steps that Zoltan Kulle was in the process of constructing the Black Soulstone. As we know in Diablo 3, it wasn't exactly finished. It just required a little bit more in order to have its creation complete, and it had just been kind of sitting in stasis, for a few hundred years. But in that time period, Adria went around, modified the creation of the Black Soulstone, but also found all the other lesser and prime evils that had died on Sanctuary and marked their souls, so that way once the Black Soulstone was created, it would immediately reach out, grab onto the essence of those evils, and pull it into the Soulstone. Because that was the whole idea, to go through and create the primeval for Diablo. And so that was kind of like the aspect of why they all of a sudden just kind of like got sucked in, is because she had gone out, found everyone and done it. 'Cause the part that I'm forgetting is whenever a demon dies in Sanctuary, its soul leaves an imprint that's intrinsically tied to it. That kind of like explains like possessions, or if there was an area with a lot of demonic activity or a lot of demons had been killed there, how it never feels quite right. That's why like with New Tristram, they didn't just rebuild Old Tristram. Is there was just so much demonic activity there, it's forever kind of scarred by that essence of demonic presence. And of course, the greater the demon, the greater the imprint. In Baal, Mephisto, and Diablo, as well as during the course of Diablo 2, Andariel and Duriel had all been killed on Sanctuary, and she was able to go through and mark all of them. And so the only ones that were missing at that point was Belial and Asmodan, in order to go and throw them in, which you, through the course of the game, kill those evils and then complete everything. Yeah. There we go. So
I know more now.
Yep.
The more you know.
There you go. So that is why the souls of the primevals were directly pulled into the Soulstone upon its creation, and why it seemed to have an affinity for the prime and lesser evils. It was specifically its construction was modified for them, for this purpose.
Yeah, that's actually kind of gnarly, because if you think of having something that small on, say, Earth, and it was modified and has had enough power in it that, thousands of miles away where some of these lesser and greaters were killed, and nope, it's done, click. It's like faster than the speed of light transfer of the souls. Yeah, that's pretty gnarly.
It's soul magic. It doesn't have to correspond to the laws of physics.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, Zone Cool. You smart bastard. Yeah. Why did you have to go so bad to be cool?
It just to stop for a second, I haven't actually finished Watson's email. Here we are 20 minutes later.
You go, boy. You do that lower thing.
But unless you have anything else for me at the moment, I'm gonna hop back, get off my soapbox, and go back into the community feedback section.
You do the thing, boy.
All right. His next question is: in Dungeons and Dragons, we see a clear distinction between devils and demons. Does this distinction exist in the Burning Hells? Are the 7 evils considered devils while all others are demons? After all, the name Diablo is just the Spanish name for devil. And to explain that, for those of you that aren't familiar with Dungeons and Dragons, they kind of have an alignment system. And you have, good and evil, but also lawful and chaotic, to kind of give a general overview of the system of alignment, that you can be evil but still have a code of honor, and that would be lawful evil, which is the devils. They're the ones that make the contracts and trick you into giving them their souls. And then you have the chaotic evil, which are the demons, which are evil for the sake of evil. And in Diablo, no. They're all just devils, demons, the word is interchangeable, but for the most part, I've not really seen a lot of usage of the word devil, mostly demon. But to my knowledge, there is no distinction between the two. And then finally, does Sanctuary have gods? Who are the gods that the monk keeps talking about? The religion of what was it, Ivogard or Ivangrad? Dang it, I forgot it. Ivgarad is, they have 1,001 gods, and who they are, besides like Yitar, we're not really sure. And are they actually gods? We do know of at least two like true to life gods that have existed in the Diablo realm, and that's Anu and Tathamet are the two actual kind of like that you could put up on the level of being deities. Anu was what came before. He encompassed all of existence, and when he decided to embetter himself and rip out all of the evil to form Tathamet, he was it. And then once he took all the evil out, formed Tathamet, and the two fought for time immemorial before time was even a thing. And it was only when they killed one another that the rest of creation then came to be, with his spine kind of spinning up into heaven and forming the angels, and Tathamet's corpse falling to hell and becoming the demonic realm. So there are what in turn makes a god in Diablo is not something that's really well established. There are some things that, maybe like, say, the barbarians' god, Bulkathos, was actually a Nephilim. So it could be that the monks pray to, these gods that could have just been, Nephilim of old. And of course, Watson is in chat saying, well, Shin, what about Shin? That one is something that they leave purposely vague. And there's actually a short story, if you go to the Diablo 3 website, that does kind of give a little bit more credence to Shin's claims of being a god. It definitely leaves the answer very, very vague. But it, within the game of Diablo 3, you can kind of be like, well, you're still just an old dude telling stories. But in the short story about Shin on the official site, it definitely makes it seem as if there is a little bit more going on with him than meets the eye. Is he a god? Or could he be an ancient Nephilim going through and like helping us out on our quest? Or maybe he's just a really good parlor magician. Who's to say?
Mm-hmm.
But that is something I actually, that is something that I really would like to see. Is there such thing like as a god in Diablo that's not an angel, a demon, or a Nephilim? Is there another?
Yeah, that would be, it would be interesting. If there, it would be.
Yeah.
If maybe in the destruction of the two beings that, on either side, evil or good, that from the remnants something happened, and again that wasn't a lesser or greater evil or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Because we have the interesting case of Tragol, which was kind of like a guardian spirit that took the form of a dragon that watched over Sanctuary and is somehow intrinsically intertwined with the world and all the life upon it. That is like something else that, like, it seems like in the Sin War trilogy that he could have intervened on behalf of the humanity and the Nephilim when the angels and demons invaded Sanctuary, and just kind of like, I'm sick of this, I'm just going to go in there and kick all of their asses and just like push out all of hell, all of heaven, and say no. But he was held back by all of the guardians of other worlds that are out there within creation that saying, no, you can't show yourself, you can't let heaven and hell know that we exist. That kind of narrative has been rolled back, and it might be just done on purpose that in the Book of Tyrael and the Book of Cain, Trag-Ol is left as kind of a mystery, not really confirming that he does exist, while putting in the question, that he doesn't. They definitely have seemed to have rolled back from the interpretation of Trag-Ol within the Sin War, and kind of questions the kind of like canonness of his involvement there. If they decide to do something with him, or like the kind of like these like world spirits or world guardians in the future, that could be interesting, and that could be something that could potentially come about as something that might be a god.
Yeah. Even though it's like, not to get off on another tangent of a tangent, but it's like when you kind of look at World of Warcraft, like upper level kind of stuff, Burning Legion, Void Lords, the Light with the Naru, and the World Souls. There's almost like mirrors of from one game to another. They all kind of have a similarity to them. However much or little lore-wise is to be determined, but yeah, it's there.
Yep.
Especially with the way, because I didn't know the Sin War described Trag-Ol in that way, so that's something I learned. But immediately when you were saying is like World Guardian and other ones were holding it back, I'm like, World Souls and WoW, and there used to be so many, but the Legion was trying to kill them all. It's like mirrors,
Yeah. Just a little bit. Well, with that, as always, thank you, Watson, for the lore questions. If you have any other lore questions that you would like me to spend half an hour on the show, please go ahead and drop us a line at westmarchworkshop@blizzpro.com, because, well, I like talking lore. It's something I'm actually good at.
And Watson, according to my calculations, you said 2 hours of lore for $100. We spent a half an hour on that. You owe $25.
Moving on, though, we still have one more email. This one's from Trip6. And they go through and write, "Greetings, fellow Nephilim. After recently looting the Heraldic hamburger, I thought that maybe Diablo next should offer a seasonable joke set. Seasonable joke set. Sorry, hamburger flavoring. Terrible. Like a rip-off Ronald McDonald, a chicken suit, or maybe even one of those Statue of Liberty costumes, like the spinning signs that you see every tax season. I feel it would be rewarding to the community and give us all a reason to grind just a little bit harder. As for coming out on a new system, I would love to see some form of Diablo come out for iOS or Android platforms. Let's face it, as kids, we all had the time in the world to grind Diablo and Diablo 2, but as I've gotten older, it's hard to balance family, work, and Diablo. I've tried filling that Diablo void on the go with mobile ARPGs and dungeon crawlers, but all of them are just the same. Grind until your energy wears out, and then either wait for it to refill, or get microtransaction to death. Maybe they could make the mobile game compatible with a controller? Well, anyway, thank you for listening to my rant. You guys have a great podcast, and I always look forward to your newest episodes. Best regards, Trip6. And thank you very much for that. And I mean, I would love like a mobile version of Diablo, and we can only wait and see. I know we've got E3 and Gamescom, going all the way up to BlizzCon, where we could get an announcement of D3 on the Switch. Maybe? That would give us a kind of pseudo mobile way of going through and playing, and finally round out the triumvirate of consoles.
Yeah, it would. I mean, putting my natural tendency to not like Nintendo aside, I mean, when the rumor first came out, my only thing against it was that we were supposedly, again, we think we are supposedly in the tail end of Diablo 3 Rebirth Souls life cycle of the product. And all signs point towards they're doing, the next thing, and is the audience in high enough amount with the enthusiasm behind it that have a Switch or would actually get a Switch specifically to play Diablo 3 if it was ported over. That was my overall concern. It just seemed odd timing, but then again, the Switch had to be developed and brought to market, and it had to prove itself hardware-wise and capability-wise, and as Nintendo's biggest problem for the last two systems was stable and robust internet capabilities. So that was my biggest thing just against it in general. But if it did come out, then it would be super freaking easy to play Diablo at BlizzCon. Someone just brings a Switch and we just get controllers, we hook it up to a TV, we're golden.
Hell yeah. It'd be beautiful. It'd be absolutely beautiful. Though, maybe not this BlizzCon, because I already have plans of bringing a PS2 and Baldur's Gate Dark Alliance. That's going to be my ARPG of choice at this year's BlizzCon.
Maybe I'll bring the 64, so we have GoldenEye, Proof for Dark, and Levi can complain to how he had to play a Summer's Worth of GoldenEye for the 25.
But yes, that does bring us to the last of the emails. We had no items of the week to go through and pull from there. We do have one new review to go through and cover. This one is a 4-star review coming in from Scampton Philpott. And he goes through and writes, content, very good. Production, good recording quality, overall audio and good recording quality and overall audio treatment. Execution, openings often a little awkward with some nervous humor fails. Then overall pretty mushmouth, as I say as I struggle to get through reading this, with the occasional head-scratching butchery of the English language. Suggestion, no one expects 1982 radio DJ school vocal technique, but maybe at least practice speaking a little more clearly and with confidence. You have a good show, just sound like you know it. Execution aside, I do enjoy listening to the show, and good job keeping it interesting and informative. Well, definitely thank you for that. That's one of the things that I've been embracing over the last couple of months about the whole hashtag professional podcast. But it is something I have been trying to work on, because I know that this is definitely a lot more me than Leviathan. As he has that on lock, where I am definitely, here we are, been doing Diablo podcasts since like 2011, and I'm still an amateur. We'll get there one day. Maybe I'll get there one day. But
you're a pro in my heart.
Aww, means so much to me. Thank you.
You're welcome.
But definitely appreciate the candid feedback on that, and thank you for it. If you have any comments or suggestions, feel free. Go ahead. You can go on iTunes, leave us a review or a comment, or you can always go through and drop us a line at westmarchworkshop@blizzpro.com. You can send us, reviews, stories, lore questions, your items of the week, anything that you want to go through and have featured on the show. Go ahead and drop us a line. Again, that is westmarchworkshop@blizzpro.com. We are also on Twitter at the WM Workshop. You can go and follow us there, get updates about when we go live with the show or any other projects that we might be going and doing. There's one thing to definitely go through and look out for is we do want to do that Diablo 2 stream once the season goes through, ladder, have to think in old school terms, actually does reset. We might go through and get something together with that and have some opportunities for some viewers or listeners of the show to come and play with us. So keep your eyes there. And of course, we stream live on Twitch every other Wednesday night at twitch.tv/BlizzPro, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. If you like what we do here, go ahead, give us a follow. You can also check out, we do kind of a variety show every other once in a while. Hasn't been on too much lately, but it's the Blizz Pro Adventure Club. And if you like the show, if you like Blizz Pro as a whole, go ahead, give us a subscribe, use your Amazon Prime, for a free month there. It helps cover the hosting costs, not just of the Westmarch Workshop, but also Well Met, our Hearthstone podcast, and the Blizz Pro network as a whole. So it does really go through and help us out there. You can find pretty much the majority of the topics that we talked about on the show and more, though that might not be a factual statement as of this episode, at diablo.blizzpro.com, just because things have been a little bit slow on the news front. But you can also go through and check us out. We're in game at the BlizzPro clan. You just do a search for that. We've got many spots open, so go ahead and secure your seat before the season 14 starts. You can also check us out if you don't want to leave your current clan with the Westmarch Workshop in-game community. And we even have our own Discord server at discord.gg/BlizzPro. You can follow us all here individually. I am at 9ballgamer on Twitter and twitch.tv/9ball. I keep mentioning it, and I keep pushing it back. But one of these days, I promise I will stream. But if you're wanting to look for some streams and Diablo 3 content, please follow my man Leviathan at LeviathanD3 and at twitch.tv/Leviathan111. And of course, you can also find our man Dread. He is at DreadScythe on Twitter. And do you have a Twitch? Do you stream?
I do have a Twitch. I do not stream. Twitter's my one-stop shop.
And there you go. Follow him on Twitter. But with that, it's going to bring us to a close, unless you have any other lore questions that you might want answered, so we can turn this back into a 2-hour podcast.
No, I'm good.
You sure?
My head has been exploded multiple times in this episode.
You sure you're sure? Are you positive?
Yes, Shirley.
Don't call me Shirley.